For millions, he was the hilariously frantic tech genius, Agent Toby Lee Shavers in the XXX franchise, the guy who armed Vin Diesel with the coolest, most ridiculous gadgets imaginable. To others, he was a memorable bit player in epic films like Black Hawk Down or the face of his own family-centric reality show. He was a whirlwind of comedic energy, a fast-talking, gesticulating presence that was impossible to ignore. But behind the laughter and the Hollywood success was a man fighting a war that no one could see. This is a deeply human and ultimately heartbreaking exploration of the sad clown paradox. The idea that those who bring us the most joy are often concealing the deepest pain. So let's go back in time, beyond the movie sets and the red carpets, to uncover the story of Michael Roof, a life of incredible promise that ended in silence at the age of just 32. To truly understand Michael Roof's journey, we need to transport ourselves to the turn of the millennium. The late 1990s and early 2000s were a fascinating, almost schizophrenic period in pop culture. The gritty cynicism of the 90s was giving way to a glossy, high-tech optimism, all wrapped in the looming, slightly hysterical anxiety of Y2K. The internet was no longer a novelty. It was becoming the fabric of our lives, reshaping everything from music to movies. In the world of comedy, the landscape was shifting. Comedians like Chris Farley had redefined physical, high-energy comedy with a lovable, almost dangerous intensity. Dane Cook was on the horizon, pioneering a new kind of rock star-like long-form storytelling. Stand-up was loud, it was aggressive, and it was a ticket to Hollywood for those who could command a stage. This was the world Michael Roof was stepping into, a world that prized explosive energy and relentless confidence. Simultaneously, Hollywood action films were undergoing a reinvention. The stoic, muscle-bound heroes of the 80s and 90s felt a little stale. The new action hero was an anti-authoritarian rebel, a skateboarder, a snowboarder, a hacker. The extreme sports ethos was bleeding into the mainstream, and movies like XXX were the perfect embodiment of this new adrenaline-fueled aesthetic. It was less about patriotism and more about attitude. And reality television, once a fringe experiment, was exploding. Shows like MTV's The Real World had laid the groundwork, but the Osbournes kicked the door down in 2002, proving that audiences had an insatiable appetite for the seemingly unfiltered lives of celebrities and their families. This was the cultural cocktail that shaped Michael Roof's career, a demand for high-octane comedy, a new breed of action hero that needed a quirky sidekick, and a public fascination with seeing behind the curtain of celebrity life. He was a man perfectly suited for his time, arriving in Hollywood at the exact moment his unique brand of energy was most in demand. But as we'll see, the very cultural forces that lifted him up would also contribute to the immense pressure that would eventually become too much to bear. Born on November 24th, 1976, in the sunny, sprawling suburbs of Tampa, Florida, Michael Roof's early life was, by most accounts, quintessentially American. While details about his childhood are not extensively documented, he was a private man in many ways. We know he grew up in a world far removed from the glitz of Hollywood. He was the son of a father with whom he would later share a home on national television, hinting at a family bond that remained a crucial, if complicated, anchor throughout his life. From an early age, it was clear that Michael had a gift, not just for being funny, but for commanding attention. He possessed a raw, kinetic energy that couldn't be contained in a classroom or a typical 9-to-5 job. That energy found its natural home on the stand-up comedy stage. The life of an aspiring comic is a grueling one. It's a nomadic existence of long drives, cheap motels, and dimly lit clubs, performing for audiences that can range from adoring to openly hostile. It's a relentless grind that weeds out all but the most passionate and resilient. For Michael, this was his training ground. He honed his craft night after night, developing a comedic persona that was loud, physical, and unapologetically in your face. He wasn't a comedian who gently invited you into a premise. He grabbed you by the collar and dragged you along for the ride. On stage, he channeled that whirlwind energy into a unique style, a blend of manic performance and sharp observational humor. He didn't just tell jokes, he physically embodied them with wild gesticulations and a rapid-fire delivery that left audiences breathless. His hard work paid off. By the late 1990s, he had built a solid reputation on the comedy circuit. The culmination of this early phase of his career came in 1999, when he was invited to perform at the prestigious Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Montreal. For a comedian, this is like an aspiring actor getting a call back from Martin Scorsese. It's a seal of approval, a declaration that you have arrived. Performing at Just for Laughs puts you in front of the industry's most powerful agents, managers, and casting directors. It was Michael's golden ticket, the moment that transformed him from a working road comic into a legitimate Hollywood prospect. And Hollywood took notice. His success in Montreal opened the door to acting, and he began to land roles that, while small, placed him in the orbit of cinematic greatness. His first major credit was in a film that couldn't have been further from the world of stand-up comedy. Ridley Scott's visceral 2001 war masterpiece, Black Hawk Down. Cast as Private Maddox, a soldier caught in the brutal Battle of Mogadishu, Roof was part of a sprawling ensemble of incredible actors. Imagine that transition. 1 minute, you're on stage trying to make a room full of strangers laugh. Next, you're on a meticulously recreated war zone set in Morocco, directed by a cinematic legend, acting out one of the most intense and harrowing events in modern military history. For a comedian known for his boundless energy, it was a chance to channel that intensity into something completely different: fear, adrenaline, and desperation. While his screen time was limited, his inclusion in such a critically acclaimed and culturally significant film was a powerful statement. It proved he had range. He wasn't just the funny guy, he was an actor. But his breakout role, the one that would forever define his on-screen persona, came just a year later. In 2002, he was cast as Agent Toby Lee Shavers in the action blockbuster XXX. You have to remember the time, the early 2000s. The world was craving a different kind of hero. The film was conceived as a new kind of spy movie for the new millennium, with Vin Diesel's Xander Cage as the loud, extreme, sports-loving anti-James Bond. And if Xander was the muscle and the attitude, Toby was the brains and the comic relief. He was the nerdy, hyperactive tech specialist, a modern-day Q for the Red Bull generation. The character was a perfect fit for Roof's comedic sensibilities and tapped directly into the rising pop culture archetype of the indispensable tech genius. Toby Lee Shavers was a whirlwind of nervous energy, a fountain of technical jargon and sarcastic one-liners. He was the man behind the curtain, constantly exasperated by Xander Cage's reckless disregard for his beautifully crafted gadgets. Their chemistry was immediate and undeniable. Roof provided the perfect, frazzled counterpoint to Diesel's cool, stoic demeanor. He was the relatable, slightly panicked guy in the chair, and audiences loved him for it. A little-known fact that speaks volumes about his performance is how much of his dialogue and mannerisms were reportedly improvised. Director Rob Cohen put enormous trust in him, allowing him to riff and create in the moment. This wasn't just about reading lines. It was about inhabiting a character so completely that the words flowed naturally. He was infusing Toby with his own unique, chaotic energy, and it electrified his scenes. XXX was a massive global hit, and suddenly Michael Roof was a face recognized all over the world. He reprised the role in the 2005 sequel, X State of the Union, this time starring Ice Cube. While the film wasn't as successful as its predecessor, Roof's return was a welcome and essential thread of continuity. With the main star replaced, he became the anchor for the audience, the bridge connecting the two movies. He was now an established part of a major Hollywood franchise. In the same year, he also appeared in the big screen adaptation of The Dukes of Hazzard as Dil Cass. The role allowed him to lean back into his broader, more physical comedic roots, proving he could handle the fast-talking nerd humor of XXX and the goofy country-fried slapstick of Hazard County with equal skill. On paper, his career was on a perfect upward trajectory. He had conquered stand-up, proven his dramatic chops, and become a beloved character in a blockbuster franchise. The dream had been achieved, but the velocity of that kind of fame carries an immense, often invisible pressure. As his public star rose, his private world, the one hidden from the cameras and the red carpets, was becoming increasingly complicated. We often see the success, the movie roles, the apparent glamour of it all. But for Michael Roof, the most revealing and perhaps most poignant chapter of his career was one that few people remember, his 2006 reality TV show, Raising the Roofs. In a move that surprised many, Michael, along with his wife and their young children, packed up their lives in Hollywood and moved back to his hometown in Florida to live with his father. The premise of the show was built on this culture clash, the Hollywood actor and his family readjusting to a simpler, more provincial life, all under one roof with his blue-collar dad. On the surface, it fit perfectly into the celebrity reality genre of the time. It was marketed as a light-hearted, fish-out-of-water family comedy, but watching it now with the benefit of hindsight, it's impossible not to see it as something more. It feels like a search for an anchor, a deliberate retreat from the chaos of Los Angeles, an attempt to reconnect with something more stable, more real. The show is a fascinating and often overlooked document. In it, we see Michael not as a hyperactive agent or a slick comedian, but as a father and a son. We see him navigating the everyday frustrations and joys of family life. But there are also glimpses of the underlying struggle. The pressure to be on for the cameras, even in his own home, seems palpable at times. The show was a gamble, an attempt to rebrand himself and take control of his own narrative. But it also meant turning his private life and his family's life into public entertainment. It blurred the very lines he may have been trying to redraw. The show only lasted one season, and after it ended, Michael's public presence began to fade. This retreat from Hollywood, initially framed as a choice for his family, now looks like a harbinger of the immense personal challenges he was facing away from the cameras. The unspoken truth, which would only become clear after his death, was that Michael Roof was living with bipolar disorder. To understand Michael's story, we have to understand what this means. Bipolar disorder isn't just about mood swings, it's a condition of extremes. It can manifest as periods of mania, intense highs, characterized by boundless energy, racing thoughts, impulsivity, and a decreased need for sleep. This is often followed by crushing periods of depression, marked by profound sadness, lethargy, feelings of worthlessness, and a complete loss of interest in life. Now think about the life of a performer. The very symptoms of a manic episode, the high energy, the quick wit, the infectious confidence, are often the exact qualities that are celebrated in a comedian or an actor. It's entirely possible that what audiences perceived as Michael's brilliant comedic energy was, at times, a symptom of his illness. He may have been harnessing the storm inside him and turning it into art, into laughter. But the cruel irony of bipolar disorder is that the highs are always paid for by the lows, and the depressive episodes are silent, invisible, and devastating. Living with this condition is a constant, exhausting battle, and doing so under the immense pressure of the entertainment industry is almost unimaginable. Hollywood is a world of incredible highs and devastating lows built in, landing a huge role, then facing months of unemployment, receiving public adoration, then reading scathing reviews. For someone whose brain chemistry already operates in extremes, this external volatility can be catastrophic. Add to this the stigma surrounding mental illness, which was particularly strong in the early 2000s, especially for men. The expectation was to be tough, to be in control, to power through it. Admitting to a struggle, especially a mental one, was often seen as a sign of weakness, a potential career killer. How do you tell a casting director you can't make an audition because you're in a depressive state so deep you can't get out of bed? His decision to move his family back to Florida, documented in Raising the Roofs, can be seen in this light as a desperate search for stability. He was a husband and a father to 3 young children. He may have believed that removing himself from the high-stakes environment of Hollywood and surrounding himself with family would provide the foundation he needed to manage his illness and find peace. A quote from a friend, shared after his passing, is particularly haunting in this context. He was fighting so hard to be a good husband and a good father, but he just had this darkness that he couldn't shake. It's the story of a man trying to outrun his own shadow, building a new life in the hopes that it would save him from himself. The years following Raising the Roofs were quiet ones for Michael, at least publicly. He was no longer in the Hollywood spotlight, but his internal battles were intensifying. Alongside his struggle with bipolar disorder and depression, he was reportedly facing severe financial difficulties. The cruel reality of an acting career is that it lacks a safety net. The paychecks from blockbuster films don't last forever, and if the roles dry up, the financial pressure can become immense, especially for someone supporting a family. For Michael, this convergence of mental health struggles and financial strain created a perfect storm. The feeling of being unable to provide for his family, coupled with the crushing weight of depression, is a burden that can feel insurmountable. This wasn't about a fading celebrity. It was about a father and a husband who felt he was failing, trapped in a downward spiral with no apparent way out. The final days of his life are shrouded in a profound sadness. By this point, Michael was not just an actor, he was a husband and a father to 3 young sons. He was building a life away from the chaos of Hollywood. But on the morning of June 9th, 2009, his wife reported him missing. A search began, filled with a desperate hope that he would be found safe. But later that day, in a moment that would shatter his family's world, that hope was extinguished. His body was discovered in a wooded area in Snellville, Georgia. He had taken his own life. Michael Roof was 32 years old. The news was met with a tidal wave of shock and disbelief. How could the man who radiated such manic joy on screen be gone? How could the funny, fast-talking sidekick who made everyone laugh be consumed by such a deep, private despair? There were no public controversies, no scandals that preceded his death. There was only a devastating silence, the kind that rushes in to fill a void that makes no sense. The historical debate, if you can call it that, is not about his actions, but about the systems and stigmas that failed him and so many others. His death forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the entertainment industry. It's a world that demands resilience, but often provides instability. Does it attract people with pre-existing vulnerabilities, or does the constant rejection, the loss of privacy, and the immense pressure to stay relevant create them. Michael's story is a stark example of a system that celebrates a performer's energy and charisma, that commodifies their very essence, but offers little support when the lights go down and the inner demons emerge. His tragedy also speaks to a broader cultural issue: our collective inability, especially at the time, to talk openly about male mental health. The sad clown trope is so pervasive because it's so often true. Men, and especially men in the public eye, have historically been conditioned to suppress their pain, to wear a mask of strength and competence at all costs. Michael Roof wore the mask of the comedian, a particularly heavy one, built from frantic energy and rapid-fire jokes. It made the world laugh, but behind the mask, he was suffocating. The tragic irony is that his greatest professional gift, projecting that infectious high-octane joy, was likely the very thing that made his private struggle so isolating. His death wasn't a single isolated event. It was the final tragic outcome of a long, silent, and lonely war, fought on two fronts: one against a crippling illness and the other against a world that couldn't see past the smile. So what is the legacy of Michael Roof? What is the lasting significance of a life cut so tragically short? On one level, his legacy is preserved in his work. He will forever be Agent Toby Lee Shavers, the frantic genius of the XXX franchise. He will be the soldier in Black Hawk Down, the comedic relief in The Dukes of Hazzard. His performances are still out there, ready to be discovered by new audiences, still capable of bringing a smile or a laugh. They are a testament to a unique and vibrant talent, a spark of comedic lightning captured on film. But his deeper, more important legacy is a cautionary one. His story is a powerful and heartbreaking precursor to the more open conversations about mental health that we are finally beginning to have today. His death, along with the later, more public tragedies of figures like Robin Williams and Anthony Bourdain, has helped to slowly chip away at the stigma. He is a crucial part of a painful narrative that has forced us to acknowledge that success is not a shield against suffering. Fame is not a cure for depression. Michael's story teaches us that we must learn to look past the performance. We must understand that the brightest smiles can hide the heaviest hearts. It compels us to create a world where it's safe for people, especially men, to admit they are not okay, and to ask for help without fear of judgment or professional ruin. It highlights the profound importance of support systems, of community, of checking in on the people in our lives, no matter how strong or successful they may seem. His life and death represent the ultimate contradiction of the human experience, the capacity for immense joy and profound pain to exist within the same person. He was a man who made his living making people happy, but who couldn't find a sustainable path to his own happiness. He mattered, not just because he was famous or funny, but because he was a human being who fought a brave, desperate battle against a devastating illness. In the end, Michael Roof's story is a quiet tragedy that resonates loudly. It's a call for empathy, a plea for understanding. When we remember him, we should, of course, remember the laughter. Remember the boundless energy, the memorable characters, and the joy he brought to the screen. But we must also remember the struggle. We must remember the husband and father who was trying to find his way back home, the man who fought a silent war until he could fight no more. His life was not just a footnote in Hollywood history. It was a beautiful, complicated, and ultimately unfinished story that reminds us of the fragility of life and the quiet battles being waged all around us every single day. Let's honor his memory by being a little kinder, a little more aware, and by ensuring that those who are struggling in the shadows know they don't have to fight alone. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.